Hi, everybody. Welcome to the AMA or Ask Me Anything Zoom call today. And welcome to my office. And I have all kinds of things to share with you. So this is pretty exciting. And I'm, well, I hope it's warmer where you are than it is in Kodiak, Alaska. But let's dive right in. And one of the things I like to do at the beginning of these calls is share just a snapshot of what it looks like right now in our garden or yard. And it's just going to be a little quick snapshot. So I'm going to share my screen. So this is a quick snapshot of, actually, I just took this image about an hour ago. And this is looking at part of our garden. And this is the Alaska Marine Highway ship or ferry Tustamina going by in front of our house. And I'll give you a little tour. This is the American flag leaning on the railing because we normally have it posted here, but the winds were too strong. Starlink antenna. But you'll notice I have raised beds with hoops, and I've pulled the plastic off because I'm working the beds. Here is spinach that actually overwintered since I planted it in September. It grew a little bit and then it kind of went to sleep or suspended animation over the winter, and then it starts growing again. This spinach you see here starts growing again in February when the day length rises above 10 hours. So that's kind of a fun thing to check in on for your garden's latitude, and you can determine what your day length is, and you might be able to get a shorter or longer gardening time. And then this is what it looks like um, in the summer, just a little snapshot. So things happen very quickly here and very intently. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second here, and I'm going to remember to open up the chat. So uh, that way, type in, and I'm going to type in where you're hailing from. Type in where you hang your hoe, where you garden. And for me, um, I'll type in where I garden, Kodiak, Alaska, and give me one word that describes your weather. Like just one word. Well, I'll give you two. So I'm going to say Kodiak, Alaska. So type it in the chat where you garden and one word that's kind of a weather word, I call it WW. So I'll say cool, drizzly. That's what we've got here right now. There we go. Cool and grizzly, drizzly, actually grizzly too, because our grizzly bears are starting to come out of hibernation. So Gretchen or Linda or anybody, just type in the chat, turn on your chat. It's on the bottom of your screen and it says chat there. And just type in where you're from and what your weather's like. Could be hot. And so turn on your chat. Eagle River, sunny and cool. I like that. Sunshine's happening. Hopefully the snow and the ice is thawing out. And all of Alaska this year had a very cool winter, and it's been a challenge. So I know I have friends down in Texas, and they're having a hot spring where they are. So open up the chat if you can, and just type in, yeah, where you live, where you garden, um, pollen free. That's a really good way to put it. Yeah, when it rains anywhere, it's a dust-free day, as my husband says. So, um, yeah. So I'm going to put in the chat links for you, and like if I have something that I'm like I have a list to share with you, I'll just put it in the chat. And as we answer questions, um, I can do that as well. So let's get started. And here we go. I'm going to share my screen off and on. So I'm a one-arm paper hanger. And so just bear with me. I'm going to, so put in your questions in the chat as we go and I'll monitor it. But I also pulled from the survey I sent out last week some of the questions. And you might want to take some notes because what gets written remembered. As a matter of fact, I just read an article about countries, Norwegian countries, that 10 years ago shifted their school from basically books to iPads and computers. Whoa, now they're taking a second look and they are removing, I should say, just removing a lot of the iPads and computers and bringing the books back, which I think is exciting because they're realizing that computers are just like scrolling and quick reading, but it's with books that we really, really learn. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents for analog stuff. Okay, so type in your questions if you have any questions. It could be, hey, what's it like to, do you get bears in your garden? What do you think about this or that? And I'm happy, 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 happy answer. So I'm going to share my screen off and on, and I'm going to monitor the chat. So, or raise your hand, that works too. Um, Portion of screen. And okay, so that's what it looks like ish in the summer. And like again, here's what it looks like an hour ago. It's still cool. I have found that if you're in a cool climate, your soil temperature needs to be at least 43 degrees. And that's why a soil temperature is one of your best friends this time of year, for sure. Okay, so here's one question as far as the challenge. I asked in my survey, what is your biggest challenge? And Doris wrote in and said, preventing scab on potatoes. Now, it's a very um, common belief that scab, it's all about the potatoes, and it's not. It's about the pH of the soil. Your pH in order to grow scab-free potatoes. Now remember, the scab or the fungus disease that causes scab is present in mostly all soils. It's just like you and I might have streptococcus bacteria in us, but it doesn't mean that we run around with strep throat all our lives. So the healthier you can have your soil, the better. So it exists in the soil, but it proliferates when the soil pH gets down to say five, gets higher than the basic 6.5 or 7, so into your alkali realm. So if it gets too high, then it tends to explode, which means if you're adding a lot of fresh compost or high pH material, like too much to your soil, and it raises the pH, or you're adding lime for other plants, then you can have a scab problem. It doesn't mean you can't eat the potatoes, but it means that they won't store as well. And if anybody has any comments on what I'm saying here, type them in the chat and I'll just keep watching. So it's good to add some compost to your soil, but it's very important to monitor the pH. So in order for Doris to bring the pH down, she might need to add some basic soil, um, maybe a little bit of sulfur. Now, sulfur is what you would add to, say, azaleas and rhododendrons, because that, or your blueberries, if you want, or the pH of your soil for your blueberries, that's another thing you would add to the soil to bring the pH down. Now, it can be that you overdo it and the pendulum swings too far the other direction, as in, when I first started gardening here in Kodiak, our local soil is mostly volcanic and it's very acidic and low pH. It's also low in uh, organics. So you can go too far and then you can have problems with scab. So scab isn't pretty on your potatoes, but also it just doesn't store as well. So eat any kind of scab potatoes first. So if you have scab potatoes and you want to use those to plant in another bed, it's not like you're going to transfer the scab to another raised bed. So don't worry about that. It's all about that dirt, about that dirt. And that's very important. The other thing to do to prevent scab in your potatoes and prevent nematodes, on your in your broccoli, all of that. What? You need to rotate your crops. So it doesn't have to be complicated. If you have raised beds, just have a rotation schedule. Like don't plant potatoes in the same family as, say, tomatoes, the next time, rotation, because they're in the same family. It's all about a family. It's all in the family, like the old show was. So that's very important, is to keep in mind that your brassicas, your cole crops, your brassicas, and that is what? Your cauliflower, your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts, your kale, your cauliflower, all of those need to be rotated. And the tough part is that of a lot of home gardens are those brassicas. So it can be difficult to rotate those in raised beds if you have small gardens. I get it. I have a friend who developed nematodes, and she can't grow any of those families in her main garden anymore. She's going to grow them in large containers for a while. Now, the other thing too is I was told, or I had read, if you have nematodes, like root knot nematodes, in your raised beds, that you can't grow that similar crop for like 20 years. And that's not necessarily so. If you continue to work on your soil with compost, then you're more likely to reduce that problem. And if you use compost and not chemicals, you will enhance that soil microbial activity, which soil scientists are now realizing is the number one thing to do to have healthy plants. You need to have a healthy biome in your soil. It's just like our guts, you guys. Studies are coming out that the more beans and fiber and plant-based diet you have, the healthier gut biome you have. Our guts are our second brain. So I know it sounds a little weird, but our guts are our second brain. Um, so I'm going to share for the next question. Are there any questions on what I just covered? It's a lot in one answer. So if you have any, like, I didn't get that part, Marion, then just type it in the chat, and I'll do that. So remember, I'm going to type in here your brassica plants um, are a big family. Yep, that's very, very important. Let me see, I do have some links here. Okay, okay, I'll just wait on this one. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. Stand by, as we say in the nautical language here, because I used to be a merchant marine officer. So here we go. Um, okay, so another angst or challenge that came up was sent in by Colleen, and she said, weeding beds for planting. Where the heck did they come from, and how did they take over so fast? And that goes with this comment that came in. Her problem, weeds. They are seasonal, so even if I eradicate the spring weeds, a new wave comes in a few weeks. It's a constant battle, and it takes much of the fun out of gardening. It's a constant battle, and it takes much of the fun out of gardening. Well, I can completely understand that comment that Sarah sent in, because um, I think this was the number one challenge that people faced. And there is one main answer I'm going to share with you that I've learned in the 40 years that I've been gardening. And this is what Leslie Land, former garden writer for the New York Times, said: compost is the all purpose answer to everything. And if you have enough of it, you won't need much of anything else. You won't need much of anything else. In fact, I'm going to copy this and put this in the chat. So let me turn this chat on. Okay, here we go. So I'm not saying that you have to start making compost. A lot of people don't have the energy or the space. Um, and it's a misnomer that it takes too much time because I actually make compost 6 weeks, and I have some some YouTubes on that, and I'm just going to put that in the chat too, just the basic. So here's how that works. Okay, the more you add compost or mulch, or even dig in your food scraps into your soil, the the fluffier and better improved your soil is. And let me just kind of talk about that a second. Um, 50% of ideal soil, if you're to take a pie chart like this, cut it in half, 50% of ideal soil is water and air. And these are the highways that nutrients travel underground in the root zone. So if you walk on your soil, or if your soil is compact, and we'll talk about sandy clay soil in a minute, then you compress that, and the nutrients can't get to the plants where they need it. Because plants don't eat nutrients in the ground, they actually have a relationship. Um, and this is what scientists are discovering. They have a relationship with the bacteria, and they're able to say, hey, dudes, I need potassium and I need magnesium. Bring it to me. So getting back to the weed problem, if you have fluffier soil, it actually will raise the pH a little bit slightly if you have very acidic soil, which is something that weeds don't like. A lot of weeds show up in soil that's like forgotten or bare, is usually slightly acidic, or when I say bare, I mean empty and slightly acidic. And so when you add compost, not only are you improving your soil, but it makes the weeds easier to pull. It makes the weeds easier to pull. So that strategy, that weed strategy you need to have, is to go out frequently and just work on a little patch. Even set your timer, even set your timer on your phone. If you did 15 minutes a day, um, then progress. And my favorite weeding tool is this Cobra head digger, because you want to get down all the way to the roots. Okay. So that's what you need to do. Is the key is to turn in compost and to improve your soil. And then the weeding becomes easier, and you just spend that time, like I said, 15 minutes a day. If it's totally overwhelming, like let's say you got back to you had maybe you had you traveled for 2 years or something, or you just got back to your raised bed. Now you find that it's completely inundated with weeds. So if it were me, depending on the weed, of course, I would just dig everything out. I know it sounds really sad, but that's what I would do. And in the picture I showed you of our garden, and let me just show you what I'm doing right now, because I have to dig this out too. And that is right here. So if you notice this little patch here, I have buttercup in our lawn, and rather than use chemicals, I'm actually just digging out part of our lawn and replacing it with other sod. So that's one way to get around the chemicals. Um, so are there any questions on weeds? It's pretty simple. I went through this in a way. I thought I was really smart one year. I had raised beds in a former yard, and I thought, oh, I'm going to contact our local lumber yard, and I'm going to get a truckload of sawdust, and I'm going to lay the sawdust in between the raised beds. Doesn't that sound beautiful? Well, it did for about a year. But what happened? this is exactly what I'm going to get to. How do you manage horsetail? Because that's exactly what happened. So thank you so much for that question. It's perfect timing. Um, so what I did is I introduced horsetail into my yard, and it was coming up in my raised beds. And so, but the more I added the compost into the raised beds, that pH and that richness, the horsetail couldn't stand it. So I scraped off the sawdust and I started adding more organic material to those spaces in between the raised beds. I planted grass seed, and I didn't, after about 2 or 3 years, no horsetail whatsoever. Not to say that it doesn't show up in my greenhouse sometimes, my beds. I just pull it as is. But because the soil is nice and fluffy, thanks to compost, it's pretty darn easy to pull up the horsetail. So that's my answer to that one. Does that help? You guys have any other questions? This is good on this particular topic. I know there's really challenging stuff. I just visited a friend of mine as far as weeds go. She lives in Port Townsend, Washington State, and she lives on a cliff. And she says, Marion, come on out here and check this out. So, and there's this vine that's coming up off over the cliff and starting to inundate her yard, her landscape yard, and her garden. And she says, oh, guess what this is? I said, I have no clue. I've never seen this before. She says, it's kudzu. So I was, I grew up in Washington State. I never thought in my million years that I would see kudzu on the west coast of the United States, but it's there. So she's got to pull a lot. Um, okay, let's go. I'm going to go to the next question here. Uh, Bear with me. Okay. Okay. And so any kind of weedy question, weedy answers? Um, let's see here. Let me turn on the chat. Okay, let me move this over here. Okay. Okay. Question about, let me go here. Let's question about potash. Um, so please discuss the addition of potash to soil and the measure there. Homer, 45 degrees Fahrenheit, partly cloudy. For potash, I am pretty conservative about adding potash, which adds quite a few minerals, but potassium and magnesium, but potassium in particular, those two. Because a little goes a long way. I tend to add the a little bit of the wood ash like potash, like potassium potash, to my compost and not so much directly on the raised beds. But if I do, let's say I have about a 4 by 8 foot raised bed, and by the way, the width of a raised bed should be just wide enough so you can reach in from both sides. You do not want to walk on that soil. So for potash, I do not add it to any of my raised beds until I first get a soil test done. And that is so, so important, is to have a soil test done, because there's no blanket answer. If I have the feeling that I do need to add some after a soil test on a 4 by 8 foot raised bed, I might add like a half a cup to a cup, and that's it on a cloudless day. So, does that help, Sherry? Because it's you don't want to add any, because you also sweeten the soil whenever you add wood ash or potash. So that's pretty important. Um, so if you're there, Sherry, maybe ask, or I don't ask you, if you've taken a soil test, and this is the best time to do it before you're planting, or in the fall. Anytime's a good time to take a soil test, you guys. It's pretty busy right now in the United States for the test labs that are conducting it, and so I sometimes will wait a little while and get over that rush period of the spring here in the U.S., and that's what I'll do. So Gretchen has this question. You might see it in the chat. How do I test soil if using halibut tubs and containers? Too many to test. Halibut tubs, by the way, are what we have in a commercial fishing industry. They're very tubs. They're black, maybe 30 inches or so across and about, like 24 inches deep. They're hardy and sturdy. If you want to be a millionaire, you'll figure out how to sell these commercial fishing halibut tubs to gardeners because they're indestructible and they're phenomenal. But anyway, so here's your answer, Gretchen, that I would do is if you pretty much know which tubs or containers or window boxes you've been adding what to, then you kind of think of them in groups. Like maybe you've got two groups, like one has older soil and one has a little fresher soil. Then I would do two tests. I would do two tests. But in addition, if you do have some raised beds with your containers, I would also get tests done with that. I also, when I had my soil test done, when I first moved here and I started making compost again, I actually sent in a sample of finished compost as well. So it is your to have a soil test done. It's kind of like, well, you know, you don't go outside and dress for the weather until you actually look at what's going on. So, soil test is don't make any radical adjustments until you actually have that foundation. And if you have an organic garden, always ask the lab for results for an organic soil tests. That's really important because it's completely different if you just deal with chemicals. So I hope that helps, Gretchen. Just take samples of the most common raised containers that you have, and you'll get the results. Because I know that for some people, that's what they have. They have containers, which is great. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next question. And okay. Um, Keeping up with a large garden. This is what Betty said. She says, I've created over the past 15 years. I'm now 80 years old, and it is difficult to do things. So, Betty, I'm going to share, and with you guys, I'm going to share, uh, how should I say, an unexpected surprise when I set up my garden. And I'm going to um, give you guys the link here in the chat. So I can understand where she's coming from, or Betty's coming from. I just turned 70 in March. Hey, welcome to the 70s. Good music then. So I'm going to put this message in the chat. And this is a link to a video I made because I found the unexpected surprise was this. And I kid you not, it has actually been so helpful for me. Now you'll notice that I have white hoops here. These are PVC pipes, and we used to put these in our raised beds in the spring, and we would take them out in the winter. And then one day, my husband says, why do we go through all this every year? Why don't we just leave them in the raised beds? It turned out that it had so many benefits that that was the surprise. For one thing, we cover our raised beds during the winter, the rainy season, snow, and everything, with a reinforced plastic. And I say reinforced, and I share that in the video, what kind of plastic. It's what construction workers use. It's got nylon strips in it, and we have some pieces that are 15 years old. But that protects the soil from getting washed out of the rain and losing a lot of the nutrients. The other thing, the other reason why we leave them up all year now is we cover these raised beds with a variety of materials. And when I say a variety of materials, it can be like webbing to keep out the rabbits, or I'm talking, you might have rabbits, but rabbits, squirrels. We have birds that get in there and dig up and upend all the peas and the seedlings, even deer. So we do that. We also cover it with tool fabric, that fleecy wedding ballet fabric that comes in all kinds of colors. I use tulle fabric over these hoops to protect my root crops, like my turnips and my radishes, from root maggots. Now, you might be dealing with carrot fly that dig into your carrots. The same thing. Tulle fabric is less expensive than the fleece that you buy. It is durable, it lets the rain, the water through, and you can sleep at night. And here's the biggest surprise. I almost want to cry when I say this because it means so much. Is when I'm working in the garden and I'm weeding or bending over or transplanting, I can use those hoops as a support. So if I have a backache or I'm not quite like maybe I just got up in the morning, I haven't had my coffee yet, I'm unstable, right? I will actually grab one of those hoops and I lean on it and I do my work in the garden. Does that make sense? Because I, probably like you, love to garden. It is my happy place. And I want to garden as long as I can because being outside and it just feels good to have hands in the dirt. And I talk to the plants and I'll let you know when they talk back. And so these hoops have been a blessing. At first, I thought, well, this is going to be a pain in the you know what to have these hoops up all the time. I'm going to go around them all the time. I am so completely used to it that it's not a big deal anymore. Um, so that's why I put that link in there, how to transform your raised beds with hoops and so on, because it's made a world of difference uh, to me. So I hope that helps Betty as well, because having anything that will help us garden longer and healthier is worth it to me. So let's see here. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next question, unless somebody's got questions about that. Using hoops and the benefits of having hoops in your garden. Okay. So there you go. Um, it says Sherry on there, but you don't look like a Sherry. That's great. Okay. So let's see. Any other thoughts here? Let me see. I want to add this link to you. This is kind of a gift for you guys. I created this, um, I'm going to put this in the chat. I created this document. It's 25 ways to use compost. Remember, I'm not asking you to make it, but there are enough places around the world now where composting, like municipal composting and private composting sites, are more and more popular. And that makes me so happy because we need to keep the stuff out of the landfill. So you might have access to just buying compost, which is great. And my hat's off to you. So here is a link to a publication called 25 Ways to Use Compost. And I'm giving that to you guys for being here. I normally use it to share with my Compost Academy students, but since we're talking about compost and how to use it and the benefits of it, it's there in the link. And so you guys have that. So just download it and it's going to be a PDF and it's going to show up and then you just hit the download button and you download it to your computer. So there you go. Okay, let's do next question here. Well, this is a biggie. We have sandy soil and this came up in the responses in the survey I sent out. It also came up regarding clay soil, sandy soil, clay soil. Remember I said 50% of ideal soil is water and air. If you have sandy soil, you've got too much air and everything just goes running out. And if you have clay soil, then things don't move at all. So again, that 25 ways to use compost, that's how you're going to fix sandy soil. There is no such thing for a home gardener. And I repeat, for a home gardener, there's no such thing as perfect soil that lasts forever because we demand a lot of our plants. It's intensive gardening. It's intensive growing. And we're asking a lettuce plant to live next to a radish, to live next to kale or tomatoes. Give them the choice. They're not going to choose maybe that company. So it's up to us to replenish that soil. And maybe your soil needs sand, and that's cool, but compost is your all-purpose answer. So to fix sandy soil, clay soil, neglected soil, it really is compost. And one of the methods of adding materials, organics to your garden is to actually just collect your food scraps, dig a hole, put them in there, and cover it up. But that's not the end all here. On top of that layer of soil and underneath you've got your food scraps, go ahead and plant. Sow your carrot seeds, sow your pea seeds, plant your lettuce seedlings, whatever. And it'll just drop right down, and the worms are going to come up and just start working on it for you. So, sandy soil, any kind of soil, that's what you need to do is just start adding some compost. It does take time. It's not an overnight success. I grant you that. But then, good things are worth waiting for, right? Yeah. So that's there you go. 25 ways to use compost. And um, I want to share a couple wins because we're when I call wins, when I have my UpBeet Gardener community calls, we start with wins. And so I have a couple wins. And one is um, you know, this is May, right? So I put our done or finished amaryllis bulbs in the garage to, for the leaves to dry and for them to have a rest period. And I check on them occasionally. And I just went into the garage the other day and I noticed, holy smokes, this has not one, but two bloom stalks happening. So this is May. It's not Christmas, but I don't care. What I try and do is let them get on their own schedule. And oftentimes we'll have amaryllis plants blooming in June, July, August. It's fun. And then for those of you that don't have a lot of room or you have great windows, this is a tiny, tiny Tom or a tiny Tim tomato. And you can see it's already blooming. And I'm going to grow these little tiny grape tomatoes on my kitchen windowsill. So it's doable. You can grow tomatoes outside. You can also have fun with them inside. And and then I have another kind of surprise here is this is the time of year when I notice that the new queen bumblebees are coming out. So I set these, and I'll answer that in just a second, Gretchen, about watering them. So I put out these bumblebee houses. These are like mini bird houses, and the bumblebee lands on the queen lands on the porch first off, and then this is the little door she goes in. And later on, when the eggs hatch, then the workers get in there. And then inside, I have shredded moss and cotton batting, and that's their nesting material. So I set these out, and it is so fun when they actually take up residence to watch them go in and out all summer. I could just stand there and watch them, right? So I wanted to show my other favorite tool. This is a Japanese tool, and I love it because it's ergonomical. I mean, like it's good to hold or use. Anyway, whatever the word is, I forget. But I was out digging the other day and I found this little teeny piece. See that right there? This is this is a tiny piece of a tea bag, right? This is a tea bag that I thought was paper, and it should have broken down years ago, like a long time ago. But the point I'm trying to make is a lot of the tea bags, especially this kind with plastic. So a lot of the tea bags you think are paper are actually reinforced with polypropylene or other plastics, and that when you pour hot boiling water over your tea bags like these fancy ones that cost a lot, you're actually ingesting, studies show that you're actually ingesting billions of nanoplastics into your system. And it's up to you to research which tea bag companies are plastic free. The good news is that the list is increasing as they become more aware of what microplastics are doing to us, but we also have nanoplastics in our bloodstream now, and they found it in our brain. So, how it affects us remains to be seen, but be a conscientious tea drinker, okay? What's the best thing you can do is drink bulk tea and get away from tea bags that are not for sure plastic free. So Gretchen asks, did you water amaryllis in the garage? So this is what I do. When the amaryllis is done blooming, I let things kind of flop and dry on their own. And for about, I don't know, for about 2 months in our living room or not quite in the garage, it can be in the garage, I'll water them a little bit because they're still using the green leaves and so on for their chlorophyll content so they can conduct photosynthesis, which strengthens the bulb. Same thing, by the way, for your tulips and daffodils and crocus and your spring bulbs is don't be too quick to cut off those green leaves because that's the engine that creates the energy and that goes into the bulb. So for the amaryllis, after about 2 months of watering them just lightly, then I put them in the garage. Like, okay, that's enough. And then it's good. So, and then when they're kind of wilted, so then I cut down the leaves and the stem, but I don't do it until they're really, really, really dried. Yeah. That's a good question. A very good question. Uh, okay, let's do another question here. How we doing? Okay, here we go. Okay, great. All right. Um, so sandy soil, compost, 25 ways to use compost. If you want to give a present to someone, give them a bag of compost. As a matter of fact, one of my UpBeet Gardener community members said that was her Mother's Day present. Her kids got her bags of compost, and she was happier than a clam, as we call it here. Um, so Heather had this question. Her challenge was, how do you water plants while you're away for days at a time? So that's what I'm going to cover here. And can you guess what my response is in the garden? It'd be compost. When you have compost in your containers, in your garden, your raised beds, it holds the moisture longer. And we all know that our climate is changing, it's warming. Uh, I grew up in Washington, like I said. We had pretty cool summers, but now it has shifted over the decades to like a Mediterranean climate. Um, Weather is more severe. The extreme heat days are increasing, and the more we can help your garden plants hold on to that moisture, hold on to those nutrients, and not have everything evaporate, helps everybody. And so if you have a problem with watering at all and you want to be able to retain that moisture, then add more compost to your soil. So that's what we do, here is it's all compost. I don't use any chemicals at all. And like I said, my pH was pretty low and now it's neutral, and I didn't add things to sweeten the soil at all. So that's what I would do. And it also goes with houseplants. I use a fair amount of compost in my houseplants as well, and that way my house sitter doesn't have to stress out over watering as often. So I hope that helps. I'm going to share something that's pretty special. As you know, David Attenborough celebrated his 100th birthday. And this is probably the most beautiful, sweetest uh, um, birthday gift that the BBC put together for him. And it's just a few minutes. I just wanted to share that with you. It was quite touching, and I thought it was magnificent. Actually, when I first saw it, it uh, just brought tears to my eyes. All right, you guys, that's what I have for you. If you have any questions, I am here. I am happy to answer them. I really appreciate your time, and I hope it was helpful and inspiring in one way or t'other. So have a great rest of your day, and big blessings from my garden in Kodiak, Alaska to yours. Alrighty, bye-bye.